Hey everyone, welcome back to the Let's Talk podcast with me, John Keefe, and with my buddy here, David, aka Shamrock Balls. And today we're going to be talking about a classic film from the 1980s directed by Richard Donner. And that film is The Goonies, a cult classic at this point and a favorite amongst many, many, many fans. And I think one of those fans is you, David, right?
Yes, 100%, John. This is just one of those movies that I grew up watching. It was just a staple of my childhood, and I think it's a staple of 1980s cinema.
I completely agree. And I think this is where a big age gap kind of comes in for us because you're about 10 years older than me. So when I was born, this movie was already in the rearview mirror. It came out, I believe, in 1984, right?
1985.
1985. All right, 1 year after the Terminator. So this movie was, big for people probably like you. You were like 3 or 4 years old. Like for me, this would I compare it to similarly in 1995 over here. We had a movie come out called Jumanji that not a lot of people love, starring Robin Williams, but is one of my childhood favorites and kind of has a similar like adventure feel to it. But I can see why the Goonies would be a favorite of a ton of 1980s kids.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that this movie over the years has garnered a real cult following. I believe the movie was financially successful, probably not so much critically successful, and it was coming off the back of a lot of those like Spielberg movies that came out in the late 70s, early 80s, the likes of Close Encounters to a lesser extent, with the kids in that. But you had the likes of Raiders of the Lost Ark, All the Adventure, and then you had E.T. and Poltergeist, and then you had the likes of the Goonies. It is quintessentially of its time, very 1980s. But I think, for me, and thanks for reminding me that I'm about 10 years older than you, he was born in 1981. I can't remember the first time I seen the Goonies, but I have older brothers, and I'm sure I seen this movie for the first time on television, possibly in the late 80s, maybe early 90s. And when I was younger than the kids are in this movie, but having that kind of relating to those type of kids in this movie that are having a lazy, boring Saturday afternoon or Saturday, and you don't know what to do with yourself, and you just wish something exciting would happen. As a child, you could really tap into that, and it really kind of like sparked your imagination of, what would happen if, what if we found a treasure map? What would happen if, we went on this wild adventure and, where there was no adults to tell you what to do, or keep you in check or keep you in line. And of course, what comes hand in hand in that is, as I say, because this is quintessentially a 1980s movie, is like me and my friends, we had BMXs, the clothes that they're wearing in this movie. Do I remember having that type of clothes? The haircuts that some of the kids have, there's photographs of me with those haircuts. So, even now as an older man, as a grown man, I can kind of look back on this with a lot of nostalgia and relate to a lot of that.
Well, I would just want to see you with a picture with hair. That's fascinating enough.
Yeah, maybe I'll take you one. I'll take you one out. Maybe you can put it on the stream, sure, and show people what it's like. Listen, I can't even remember what it'd be like to have her. My daughter actually said to me, now you're messing with her on Sunday, that one of her biggest fears would be to see me with her.
So you've been bald that long? She never saw you with hair.
She's never saw me with her. I look more like Sloth now.
Well, it's funny because I never take my hat off. Only when I go to sleep, I always got a hat on because I look terrible with hair. And I took my hat off the other day at work, and someone was like, "Oh my god!" And I was like, "That's why I don't take the hat off."
Listen, if I could grow hair, I would have her down to my shoulders.
Me too.
Yeah,
It's too thin now.
it's too just you just have to just man up and just take it all off. I think we talked about that before in one of the other pods. You just have to, you know what I mean, face up to the truth. It's not coming back.
Yeah, or you can try and fake it. My dad's best friend, funny enough, his name is Jim Carrey. He's actually my brother's godfather. Swear to God, that's his name. And he used to work with my dad, and he met my stepmom, who also worked at the same job, so they knew each other very well. And he always had a long ponytail, but he always wore a hat. And one day, somebody accidentally knocked his hat off, and my stepmom didn't know that he was bald, so he's completely
Jesus
shiny up top
Christ.
with a long ponytail.
Oh, God. So you thought he had this full head of full flowing
Yeah,
hair, whether
yeah,
he just wore a cap, and then when it was knocked off, that was it. The illusion was broken.
yep,
See, you see, I should do that. I should buy a baseball cap with a built-in ponytail. So when I put it on, it's attached to the baseball cap.
yeah.
Or
You
just
look
the
like a
hair around the
totally different
sides.
person.
Yeah, would do. I would probably wouldn't suit it. So yeah, you just have to realize it's not coming back like the 1980s isn't coming back. But that's what you're saying there about the age gap between us is probably why there is maybe a discrepancy in fandom for this movie. Would you say so?
100%. I think I've kind of boiled it down to a little bit of a science because The Goonies is definitely a kids movie for the 1980s. I realize all the movies I like from the 1980s are usually not kids movies because I just watched another movie that's kind of similar to this and I believe ripped it off. It's still good. Is The Monster Squad, which,
Yes.
is following a very similar formula. And another movie that I didn't love like 100% growing up because I felt like, it's the 80s kids and I kind of related more to the 90s kids movies. But like when I go back, so, The Terminator, Batman 89, some of my favorite movies, most of my favorite movies are from the 80s, but it's mostly adult themed movies. It's not like kid themed movies like this. This feels more like if you were an 80s kid, this would be the movie for you.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I remember actually growing up in the '80s, being very young and kind of like, you grew up with. I think I've spoken about this before, John, on the podcasts and stuff. It's like we grew up with 4 television channels. If you had not everybody had a VCR, and if you did have a VCR, the majority of movies that you owned, very few people owned originals. They were usually recorded off the television, and you would go and you maybe rent a movie at the weekend or whatever, and it would be the new movie that just came out. And my parents were kind of I would say strict, but if it was something was a 15, I wouldn't be allowed to watch it. Say this is the 80s, right? So it's as simple as that. And but growing up in that decade, the big movies were the likes of your Superman, and remember people touched Superman 2 and movies, the Goonies, and then there was, as you say, I remember kids in school talking about the Monster Squad. I've never seen the Monster Squad, but you're right. It's in that same vein, and even the Lost Boys to a certain extent. I was never allowed to watch the Lost Boys because I was in 18. I never seen the Lost Boys till I was an adult, and to me, that is a very much a children's movie. And the Lost Boys was originally supposed to be in the same vein as the Goonies. The kids in that were supposed to be, or the teenagers in that were supposed to be a lot younger than most of, maybe around the Goonies kids' age, and it was going to be directed by Richard Donner as well at that particular time, but he left to go and do Lethal Weapon instead, and then he ended up producing it. So I think there was a lot of these movies that came out in the 80s, came off the back of that Spielbergian kind of movies, likes of E.T., Poltergeist, The Goonies. You can go down the road of like Never Ending Story, Labyrinth, all these type of movies that came out in the 80s, in and around that time. And The Goonies was another one of them. But I always remember when I did see it on television, it was edited for the bad language more than anything, and some of the violence as well.
I could see that. I mean, definitely on rewatch, and we kind of buried the lead here on. I know you love this movie, and I've pretty much knocked this
Yes.
movie for years here on the channel. And I rewatched it, and I'm not afraid to admit that I was dead wrong about this movie because it's great. It really is a great movie, and I just think I had to give it enough time to finally age for me. And everything you're saying is 100% right.
Listen, I'm really happy to hear that because we're picked out movies to review here, John, over the next few months, and and I know I had mentioned about Let's Do the Goonies, and you're always a good sport. You're always up for anything that I suggest, and I kind of knew that the Goonies wasn't one of your favorites, but that's not why I picked it. I picked it because it's one of my favorites, and I wanted to talk about it, and and it's good that you can revise your opinion on it because I do really think this is within the realm of the movies that we're talking here. It's definitely one of for me, one of the better 80s movies. 80s movies to me, this movie's up there with like it's not in the same bracket, but it's up there. You have to watch it with your Teen Wolf and your Back to the Future, even your Top Gun and those type of Commando and your Predator. The Lost Boys. To me, it's all within that realm. You have to watch if you like 80s movies. You have to watch The Goonies. I'm not saying you have to like it, but you have to watch The Goonies. And look, Stranger Things has become a phenomenon in recent years. Um, I have nephews that are in their early teens, and they have watched Stranger Things, and they absolutely love Stranger Things. Now, I'm a Stranger Things fan. I really like Stranger Things, but when I sat down and I first watched the first series, people like myself and yourself, who's a big Spielberg fan and is well versed in 80s movies and movies in general, I was able to sit down and watch the first series of Stranger Things and go, that's from E.T., that's from Close Encounters. And a lot of Stranger Things takes inspiration from the Goonies, no doubt about it.
Oh, 100%. Stranger Things took things from I was able to watch I think my original thoughts when I watched Stranger Things was it was a combination of Spielberg, John Carpenter, because that score is 100% inspired
Yeah,
by John Carpenter movies from the 1980s, and Stephen King. It felt like that was
100%.
I felt like that's what it took was all those guys from the 1980s. I mean, there's literally shots from Close Encounters and ET they're
Yes,
flying on a bike.
yes.
Where's that? I mean, that's the Amblin Entertainment logo, which is, this movie. Which,
Yeah,
speaking of which, with that is this movie's directed by Richard Donner, and a
mhm.
lot like Gremlins and Back to the Future, it still feels very Spielberg.
Yeah. Just on Stranger Things, I mean, we could do numerous podcasts just on Stranger Things alone, so I wouldn't want to get too sidetracked that. But you're just saying about the influences, and you're 100% right. They are the main three influences on Stranger Things. The title Stranger Things is taken directly from Stephen King's novels that were being published in the 80s. I think, is it Needful Things?
Yep,
The actual font,
100%.
the actual font.
And I have that, and that's also a very underrated movie for people who haven't seen it.
Yeah, do you know what? I actually have the book. I want to read the book first. It's sitting in there. It's one of the ones I really want to read.
I
I've
think you'll be a
collected.
little bit let down if you read the
Yep.
book first.
Oh, really? Well, I haven't had done much reading recently, but I've collected a lot of his early works, and I've read some of his early works, and I just want to complete his like the 70s and 80s stuff. When that is sitting there, I will get round to it. But you're saying there about this movie feeling Spielbergian. Yes, Gremlins. That was written by Chris Columbus. He also wrote the screenplay for The Goonies, but this story was dreamt up by Steven Spielberg. It was his idea about these kids that are bored on a Saturday and they find a treasure map and go on this mini adventure. Um, and Spielberg, of course, was producer, just like he was on Back to the Future and Gremlins, and he had a hand in helping direct the movie.
It shows on screen, and I feel like Richard Donner. He's one of these directors who's directed so many classic films, but yet they never in the same genre, and none of them feel the same. I mean, this is the guy who directed
Yeah.
The Omen, one of the greatest horror movies ever.
Yes.
Superman, the greatest. I mean, that's not in my opinion, but it is one of the greatest superhero movies out there, and without it, we wouldn't have the
Yeah.
genre. Then he directs The Goonies, which is, 1980s children's fantasy movie that is beloved. And
Yeah.
then he directs Lethal Weapons, all of them, which are considered some of the greatest buddy cop movies of all time. So it's just so strange. Like, you can't, if you watch them all back to back, it's hard to find a through line with the guy.
Yeah. The only through line is that he's consistently good.
Yeah, that's it. His best quality is he knows how to make a great movie.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, you're 100% right. I think Richard Donner done a tremendous job in this film. I don't think it's like Poltergeist in a sense that Spielberg was kind of like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Richard Donner has too much pride. If you know what happened with Superman 2, he's not going to have somebody shadow direct with him.
No, exactly. And the thing is, you're right. Richard Donner, great, very varied kind of filmography. And all those movies that you named, I love every single one of them films. And even Superman 2, which he gets shafted over, I think he directed like 75% of that finished film.
Yeah,
And Superman 2 is a good sequel.
and the Donner cut is the better version, in my opinion, actually. So
Been a few years since I've watched that one, but he done a tremendous job. From anything that I've seen about the making of this movie, he done a tremendous job dealing with kids, because there's a saying in Hollywood is that never work with children and never work with animals, and I think he done a brilliant job just letting those kids, be natural, ad lib. I've seen people complain about this movie is that the kids are too loud, the kids are too noisy to talk over each other, and my attitude is, well, have you ever babysat a handful of kids before? Because that's exactly what they're like. I mean, it's not exactly fun. You know what I mean? So I not only that, those kids in that movie done a tremendous job as well as kid actors in their performances, and how different they all are as well, and how they're supposed to be and behave is absolutely brilliant.
No, they're all great kid actors, and they all do a phenomenal job. And you know, I know you got to deal with kids, and this is what I was thinking about actually when I was watching the Monster Squad. A similar thing is, I think I didn't like the film originally when I saw it, which was the exact reasons you were saying, where you were like, you know, I thought they were all too loud. I'm like, the kid actors aren't great. Then you got to think back to this age group. I mean, this is better than Monster Squad in the sense there's more ages. Like, you know, we could see them late teens, early teens, you know, preteens. When you are around those ages, you're kind of a little asshole and you're
Yeah,
loud and annoying, and that's how they are. So, what are you supposed to like? You'd be lying. Like, who does that? M. Night Shyamalan. He makes all his kids feel like they're 35-year-old adults.
yeah, 100%. You're right, John, and that's what I'm saying about it. That I like about the kids in this is that it's natural. I don't think there's well, maybe there is a few maybe bits of dialogue or scenes where you go to yourself, you know, what sounds like an adult, you know, like Maggie's speech when he's down the well and things like that. But look, apart from that, you know what I mean? The kids act like kids, and even Josh Brolin playing the older brother, you know, you can believe that they're brothers, you know, because they're not exactly getting on, you know what I mean? But he's still being the protective big brother. Yeah, I can relate to that. Having a younger brother and having older brothers, you know, you do with you respect your older brothers, even though at times you don't, you know what I mean? But you still do what they say. Or
Exactly.
you like,
I was the older brother, so they all had to respect me.
so you weren't accountable to anybody. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
I
yeah.
know nobody had to. It's just once they started getting bigger, it's like, all right, I got to back it down a little bit because me and especially my one brother, we went at it like animals.
You had to rein it in a wee bit. He started getting bigger on you.
Yeah, no, he did. He blew all of them. I'm the shortest one, including my sister. I'm like,
Your sister.
yeah, even she's taller than me, so it's not fair at all.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying about this as well. It's like all the kid actors, even when the teenagers come into it as well, even when the girls come into it as well, they don't feel unrealistic.
Not at all. And honestly, again, great actresses that they bring in. Martha Plimpton is the one of the girls who I've always loved her, and she's great in the movie Parenthood. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
No, I haven't seen Parenthood. No.
You'd like that movie, I think, especially now that you know you're a father, you'll probably appreciate it even more. She's great in that, and they bring her in this movie. All of them. Corey Feldman is phenomenal, like he was throughout the 1980s. But Josh Brolin is the one. Like when I watch it, I'm like, I cannot believe that that's the same guy. His voice doesn't even sound close to the same.
Yeah, and like I was reading recently. I was reading a book on the making of the Goonies that he was only 16 in this movie. He looks about 21.
Yeah, my God.
Yeah, because like I know he's supposed to be playing a teen, but you know why sometimes like Grease with a cast like older people, you
Oh,
know,
that's
but
ridiculous. Grease, the one guy that literally is going to high school to 5 o'clock shadow.
yeah, exactly, because they all played it on stage and for years, and then they put them in the movie. But this, but I found out he was 16. I was like, geez, he's a big lad for 16. But you're right, Corey Feldman as well. He actually was auditioned for ET, and he wasn't right for ET, and Spielberg had said, look, I'll definitely cast you in something because he liked him, and he gave him a small part in Gremlins.
In Gremlins, actually, is the kid works the Christmas tree lot.
He's dressed up as a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
But then obviously then the Goonies came around and he was like, you'd be ideal for this. But he had already done by that stage as well. He'd done Friday the 13th part 4.
That's good acting for a kid actor, and he's got chops, which is good. You know, like he doesn't like every other kid actor. Like sometimes like they'll feel out of place. Like Sean Astin, he actually was probably more successful as an adult than as a child actor.
It's one of those things, John. It's like, it's the age thing. Like there's a lot of people would say, there's Sean Astin from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
Or the younger kids now are going to say, there's your man from Stranger Things.
yeah, which is great. I believe Stranger Things purposely cast all these people because we were just talking about Aliens the other day, and Paul Rises in Stranger Things too. It's like they were just
Yeah.
taking all these guys from the 80s and putting them in Stranger Things.
Oh yeah, 100%. And Winona Ryder's in it probably because of Beetlejuice. Yeah, and no doubt about it. They cast Sean Astin in, I think it's series 2, isn't it? Because he was in the Goonies. But people my age are going to say, "Oh, Sean Astin from the Goonies." So I think Sean Astin is absolutely brilliant in this film as well because you can tell he's kind of like the leader of the Goonies.
He is. He's their leader. And Sean Astin always just like no matter what he's in, and I feel like this must be like his natural thing. He just comes off as like the nicest person. Like even in this movie, he's
Yeah.
like the nicest kid.
Yeah, exactly. And he just does wants to do the right thing. And that's him saying about all their own personalities. Then you have like Chunk is kind of like the one that they kind of pick on all the time.
Yeah, that's an 80s trope that just again with Monster Squad, they did the same thing. The kid's always eating, they're always making fun of him for being a fat kid. That's just what the 80s were doing. Like looking back, they probably wouldn't do it now, but it's what
No,
they were doing.
no, they wouldn't get away with it. And the truffle shuffle. You would not get
Yeah.
away with that now. But the jokes in this movie as well is like I seen a thing that somebody had posted on social media. The Goonies was on television, and it was like a warning about this has outdated thoughts or outdated tropes or whatever. And it's those wee jokes that they have with Chunk. It's like when they're trying to get down to the lowest part of the basement in the cafe, and Mouth says, "I've got a good idea. Why don't we just put chocolate all over the floor and let Chunky eat his way through?" I mean, you're not going to get away with that now.
Oh no. I mean, they're not gonna get away with a lot of things. Even what's his name, Sloth. I don't know if that would even work nowadays, but
Yeah, exactly. And of course you have Dada in this movie too, who was in Temple of Doom the year before. And it's really strange because you all these years have went past of watching Temple of Doom and watching the Goonies. And to be honest with you, I know it's the same actor, but I don't think of them as the same person.
Really? Because it's funny because I don't know if you've seen Everything Everywhere All at Once, but like Kiwi Kwam, he won an Academy Award for that. And now he's like kind
Yeah.
of back in the forefront as being an actor again, which I don't know where the hell that came from because I didn't hear from that guy since the 80s. But you could tell it's the same person. Like he's got a certain speech pattern and delivery to him that it stands out.
Oh yeah, and I don't mean that. Like for example, my daughters watched Temple of Doom, and then we would watch the Goonies, and we were sitting watching the Goonies one day, and she went to me, she went, "Daddy, that's the wee kid from Temple of Doom," and I was like, "Yeah, yeah." She says to me, "I recognized his voice," So it's not so much that. I know it's the same person. It looks like the same person. You're right about the way he talks. It's just the characterizations of the two characters to me. Do the way like maybe you watch
Oh
Arnold
yeah.
Schwarzenegger. You know what I'm saying? You watch Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you know you're watching Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
When I watch the Goonies, I'm watching Dada. But when I watch Temple of Doom, I'm watching Short Round. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, actually, it's 100. I 100% agree with you. No, yeah, he falls in. They are very different characters. I
Yeah.
100% agree. 100% agree with that. Especially Dad, because he's smart and he's funny. In Short Round, he can be a little bit annoying. Dad is not annoying at all.
No, he's not. And I love how he's inspired and he loves James Bond. Um,
Yeah.
and one of them says to him something about you're double O negative. And he's like, "I'm not double O negative and 007, James Bond, license to kill." Uh,
He is great. Yeah, I mean all of them. They work great as a group together. And I have to ask you about the score because it's weird.
yeah.
The score sounds like a Spielberg score, but it's not done by like one of the guys you would expect.
Well, I've been thinking about the score because I know we would be talking about it at some stage, no doubt about that. And I absolutely love this score. I mean, this would have to be one of my top scores of all time, John. It always has been, and it's by a guy called Dave. Is it Dave Grusin? I don't know what else he's ever done. I'm sure he's done other stuff. I'm just probably totally ignorant to what else he's done. But you're saying about it very Spielbergian. To me, it's a very John Williams.
Yeah, I didn't want to like say like like kind of like what Rogue One, like he's like kind of took like a John Williams template because I want to be unfair to
Yes.
the guy, but it does sound like a John Williams score.
Yeah, and it's one of my favorite scores. It really is. And like just you have this kind of like mystical kind of theme tune as well when they find the map and they're talking about One-Eyed Willie and all that type of stuff. And then there's like a more kind of warmer kind of theme as well, which is the Goonies theme. It's just played in different type of variations throughout the movie. And then you have the swashbuckling pirate theme as well, which is really good.
My favorite theme. I love the warm theme. To be honest with you, I love that. I think that's one of the best. That for me, that's the best one in the movie. I just think it actually does kind of create good emotion, especially towards the end with Sean
Yes.
Astin when he has to portray the emotion. I think it helps to carry that moment.
Yes, definitely. And there's plenty of favorite scenes in this movie. I really enjoyed this movie from start to finish and when I put it on. But the scene that just gets me every time is like at the very end when they find the rubies. The news reporter says, "What happened out there?" And you see the kids, and they're like, "Oh, we found the pirate ship." And they're like, "Pirate ship?" And you hear Dara saying, "Oh, the octopus was really scary." So I'll address this first before I go on to what I was going to say. So a lot of people have said, like over the years, like, octopus, what's he talking about? So there's a deleted scene where there was an octopus in where they find the pirate ship, and it attacks one of the Goonies, and Dara puts, I think it's Dara, puts his Walkman into its beak and switches it on. And it makes the octopus let go of the Goonie, so they don't drown. But I always take it that he's just bullshitting. You know what I mean? Even though they went through this big adventure, he's just like, yeah, the octopus was really scary. And it's like, what's the fucking octopus? But the next thing is when the reporter says, you know, Mary, Mother of God, and you hear the music start to kick in, and they all look, and he says, ladies and gentlemen, what appears to be a pirate ship off the coast, and they turn around and you see the ship coming out from behind the rocks and the sun, and you see them and sit down and just watch it go off into the sunset. I absolutely just love that bit of the film. By the way, the music and all goes as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're at Cauldron Point, and what appears to be a pirate ship.
Oh, it's perfect. Yeah, no, they ended. I love the whole pretty much the entire third act of the movie is almost perfect to me. And I think that's kind of what, because I actually do think that the first act, I still wasn't watching it this time. I know why it's there. You know, we obviously have to establish all the relationships, but I really feel like this movie does go on a very good arc. And then the third act just pays off perfectly.
If I have to be critical, I actually find that I like the start, I like the setup, and then there's just a wee bit it lags, a wee bit in the middle, and then it just picks up again. Do you know what I mean? I think when I say lags, there's certain things in the movie which, as an adult, leans towards more the cheesiness, where I go, well, you know, I think that could have been done better, or I don't really like that. You know, like when they find the pipes and they're shaking the pipes and they push them through the road, and there's a car crash, and you know, and things like that. Like pipes don't really go like that under the ground. Do you know what I'm saying? I know it's done for just levity, but there's certain wee things, and there was a deleted scene where apparently gorillas escaped from the zoo and stole a car, and when I seen this like in the making of it, I was like, oh, thank God I didn't put that in, because something like that to me could have ruined the whole movie, you know?
That, like, there's a line, like, you know, we have certain fantasy elements, but like they don't live too far outside of the real world. You know, there's certain things that are a little bit hard to believe. You know, even like the mom and the sons, like that's a little bit ridiculous, but it still makes sense in this world.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the whole thing. The whole thing is that it is a fantasy movie. You know, it's very heightened reality, you know, but you can forgive that because it's like we talked about Tim Burton's Batman. They've kind of created this world which you can believe that this can happen. And then, like you say, when the parents come in at the end and you see, like, you know, Chunk's parents turn up with a pizza. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, you must be hungry. Like, you know.
It's like 9 in the morning or something. They turn up with a pizza, and then you have the likes of like Dada. His dad is exactly like him. He has the camera come out, but there's some sweet moments as well, because he turns out and he says about like, your guru, my greatest invention.
Yeah, that was nice. I love that. Everyone's parents seem pretty warm, which is funny because throughout the entire film, the whole thing is it's like a day where they're not being watched and everything by parents, which is funny because throughout the entire 1980s, it's pretty much a trope. Like, where the hell is everyone's parents, especially in horror movies? And like these parents, they all care about their kids, but you know they got to work. I like that they showed that the mom has like, I'll be back in an hour, like, but she's clearly on the run the whole time, but they love their kids, and all of them seem like they, you know, good, caring parents.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, this movie pretty much takes place over one day. You know, it's not like they're away for a week. So, you know, he wasn't allowed to leave the house. You know, Maggie wasn't allowed because of his asthma, and then he decides to go on this wild ride to try and get the treasure with the map. He sees his dad, you know, the passing the bikes, and then they go into the restaurant. So they're only really disappeared for one night. And of course, if your kids don't come home that night, you would call the police. And you've seen the police looking for them on the beach the next morning, which one of the cops was Richard Donner. So it was. But look, I don't know whether or not we're looking through things, people from my generation, through rose-tinted glasses. But we do kind of joke about, oh yeah, back in our day, we were told to go out in the morning, and we didn't return at dinner time. And I mean, I have many fond memories of, riding my bike and playing with my friends all day long, and only coming into the house to get a glass of water. My parents never came looking for us until it started to get dark. I mean, our dinner was ready. Of course, we weren't allowed to venture too far to the street most of the time. Even when it did become that age that they are in this movie. I remember actually going on my bike and going out all day. And we didn't have mobile phones or anything like that to keep in contact. I do think that parenting is a lot different now. I do think that parents do want to know where their kids are because of mobile phones. They're always in contact with them and things like that. So I don't know if I'm looking through things through rose-tinted glasses, that back in my day, things were a wee bit different. But I think we were a wee bit different, but maybe not so much. I don't believe that kids all sit inside the house nowadays just on their phones all day, because my daughter certainly doesn't. My daughter loves going out and playing with her friends out in the street. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, well, you know better than me. I mean, I was kind of like right there with you, despite me being younger than you. My generation was the last generation without cell phones. Like cell phones, I had one in high school, and that was like, cell phones were on the rise, and then I got a cell phone in high school, and that was it. But this age and everything like that, if I wanted to call my parents, I was calling on a home phone from somebody else's house. Like that was it. I was going out, same thing. I'll see you tonight, and that was it. My
Yeah.
same thing. Like he went to work in the morning, we'll see him tonight. Like he's not calling all day and stuff like that. He's like, he'll call when he can. Like that's how things were. It was just a different time. And I don't know if it's rose-colored glasses, but sometimes those phones, I wish they don't exist. Like there's times I work like where I actually feel better not having my phone in my hand for 8 hours, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, because the problem with phones now is that you almost have no excuse now. You know what I mean? And I don't mean that you have to make excuses. It's like if somebody wants to get hold of you at any time of day, if you don't answer your phone, it's like, oh, why didn't you answer your phone? Or I tried phoning you earlier, where were you? You know what I mean? It's kind of like, whereas like you say, back then, we didn't have that. If, for example, if I wanted to go out with say I wanted to go to the cinema with my friends, I would phone them in the morning and say, do you want to go to the cinema at 2 o'clock today? Or you would go and rap their door and say, what are you doing later? And funny, it was somebody actually, I was watching something, I can't remember what it was now, and they talked about looking up cinema times. Haven't actually looked them up in the newspaper to get the cinema times. Whereas
I remember my dad. I remember the moment my dad teaching me that, because my dad I'm surprised he doesn't still get the physical paper anymore. But that was like his thing. He would buy all 3 papers, like the New York Post, the Daily News, and Newsday. And like I remember him like showing me like this is how you look up movie times, and show me the
yeah,
section. Like so, and now it's like even school closings. Like I don't know if you guys had that. Like like if school was going to be closed, you had to watch the news in the morning, and it was like a ribbon
yeah,
running across the bottom of the screen. If you missed it, it's like, all right, we'll catch it in another half hour.
yeah. Well, I remember, like, yes, if it was, I think if it was local school closures, it would be the local radio station you would listen to. Say you got a lot of bad snow or something, and that's what it would tell you. But we also had a thing here called teletext, and it was basically, so you hit like a green button or something, and it brought you onto like a digital page on your television, and you could look stuff up like sport or news or entertainment and media, and it'll give you a story. Like for example, the football scores on a Saturday afternoon, right? If you weren't listening to the radio, they would usually have a match on the radio, and as other scores were coming through, they would keep you updated. But on teletext, you could go in a teletext and look up the football scores, and they would have each match, the attendance at the game, and then if somebody scored, it would update, say 1-0, would tell you who scored. And you could have that on and just watch it as it was coming through. So completely different world to what we live in today, John. You know what I mean? So it's not out of the realm of possibility that these kids could go out and disappear for a day.
Yeah, the parents wouldn't know until like that night when they were coming home, and then they have to like call each other's parents and be like, oh, I think they
Yeah.
went to this house, and like, where is he? He's probably still there. It's like, all right, well, go call up their mother, and then they all start figuring out like none of our kids, and then they call the cops. Like, okay, well, we
Yes.
know that these kids are gone together, and then they go from there, and it's all circumcising with the Joey Pants and his brothers escape from their mom, the just worst mom in the world.
the Fratellis.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. I love these 3 guys in this film as well, and that's what I talk about. Some of the there is goofiness to it, and they are part of the goofiness, but at times, but I remember watching them when I was a kid as well. They were scary too, like so when they wanted to be scary, could be scary. But I think the comedy from them guys comes more with each other, how they behave with each other, because Anne Ramsey this is her best performance in my opinion. Like
Yeah, she's
she was,
great.
yeah, she was terrifying, but you know that she's got a favorite son, and you establish that as the movie goes on. And when they come back with the pizza and they start fighting, you took my pepperoni, and they pull guns and all on each other. And she's like, put the guns down, and he's like, I think it's what do you call the one who's in License to Kill?
Oh man, what is his real name?
Davy, Robert Davy.
Yeah, I think that
Rob,
you're right on that. I'm on the page right. I was on the
yeah,
page before we started to see where it is, but
it's Robert Davy. He says
yeah, it is.
he says yeah he says ma you always liked him better, and she says that's right.
Yeah.
But there's a bit of it where when they come back, because they're down in the basement and they've knocked a few things over, and you hear him saying maybe it was a tremor, ma. And and she says, "I'll show you a tremor," and hits him a slap across the face. But the thing is there's another line she says as well about go down and check on your brother, and she says he better not have broke those chains, because I'm not going back to the zoo for another set.
Which is hilarious. Which is also, foreshadowing of when later he can break the chains for the Baby Ruth bar.
Yeah, so he can't break out of them if he really wants to.
Yeah, it's just you got to really like push him, and I guess I was Chunk there then? Did maybe he overhear that, and that's why he was able to get him to break it?
Oh, I don't know. I think they were there. Remember, they kind of like were hiding down there when they came in. I don't think they went down and under when they were having that conversation. I can't remember, but Chunk was in the freezer for a while with the FBI man.
Yeah, he was. And then that's why he gets stuck there for so long. And then, they kind of form their own bond, which I like, at least because poor Sloth, man, what did he do wrong? He was just born like that. And he gets
Yeah,
treated terribly. And just like all of us, he enjoys a good Baby Ruth bar.
yeah, and he just wants his food. They're torturing him, like, aren't they? Really,
Yeah,
And he's a Superman fan as well.
they're horrible. I mean, I just love the fact that, Joey Pants just was all over the place throughout the night. This guy is like one of the longest running character actors ever. Like, I mean, he's only been appreciated, I think, just for The Sopranos.
Yeah, and you know what? Like Joey Pants, like I know he's in the Matrix. I've seen the Matrix many years ago. I wasn't a big fan, so I've never seen the sequels. But like when I used to watch the Goonies for years, I used to go, whatever really happened to him? I never really looked him up on Internet Movie Database, and I was like, what? I was like, because I knew Robert Davi was in License to Kill, and I'd seen Anne Ramsey in Throw Mama from the Train, which is brilliant in as well.
Oh, great movie.
But I always thought, whatever happened to that other wee guy? And then he showed up in The Sopranos, and I was like, that's your man from the Goonies. And he was brilliant in The Sopranos. He was genuinely terrifying in The Sopranos. But I love how through it as well, Robert Davi keeps saying, he says the Sloth at the end, when they're trying to calm Sloth down. Remember when they're in the pirate ship and they're trying to slam him or calm him down, and they say, and he says to him, do you remember the time we were saving money to get your teeth fixed? And Francis spent the money on a new toupee, and he says, I don't wear her, piece of son of a bitch. But throughout the whole movie, he's when the bats come through the fireplace, you see he takes the toupee off, and he's like holding on to it so the bats don't take it off his head.
It pops off at one point. You see his bald head.
Yeah, that's right. And then they've done that gag in the Sopranos as well. Do you remember the done?
Oh yeah, well he's always been bald. Like he's always, I mean, Midnight Run, he's got a stupid wig on too, and then he's in The Fugitive and U.S. Marshals. He's always got a bad wig on.
It's when Christopher Moltisanti goes to cut his head off, and he goes like that with a wig, and it comes off, and he's like, ah, and Tony Soprano's like, what? You didn't know? They all knew it. He didn't. Christopher didn't know.
It's hysterical. I mean, how'd you not know?
I know. It's so bad. Look at it. And then Tony has a dream. Remember, he has this weird dream where he's sitting in the back of this car and Joey Pants is sitting in the front seat, but he's got like a caterpillar going across his bald head, and he just turns around and looks at him. It's creepy.
It's just stacked cast with great actors who'd go on to do again. Josh Brolin. This just blows my mind that he's in this movie. Which I guess, I
Yeah.
guess that, he got the job because I guess his father, but Josh Brolin at this point, one of our better actors.
Yeah, do you know what? Yeah, I really like Josh Brolin. He's obviously done well for himself. I think he's in like the Marvel films as well, isn't he?
He's Thanos.
Stannis, yeah, and I think there's a lot of people, again, younger people who know him as that. And I don't know. I've seen him in recent times being interviewed on talk shows, and then the hosts bring up the Goonies, and I think there's a lot of these people that grew up doing these type of movies, or maybe a wee bit embarrassed by them for many years. But when people like myself get older and are able to maybe meet them, not that I've ever met anybody famous, but meet them and say, "Here, you were in the Goonies." I think as actors, they do find their own kind of found appreciation for them older movies.
Yeah, Josh Brolin, I would think wouldn't be too embarrassed. I just saw when I was looking up him, and there was a picture of him wearing the stuff with the whatever the hell that was from the '80s to work out with. So he was like
Yeah,
wearing the old getup and everything, but looking like he does today. And I'm just like, damn, I
yes.
still don't see it.
That's right. I seen that. That was a Halloween. Him and his wife dressed up as two characters from the Goonies, didn't they? At a Halloween
Yeah.
party. Yeah. One of the best pictures I seen, and I don't know what this was about, was Mike Tyson dressed up as Clubber Lang from Rocky 3.
He would love. I'm sure Mike Tyson loves Rocky 3.
Yeah, the real life Clubber Lang, Mike Tyson.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Even better.
One of the good things about this movie as well, the cast is absolutely magnificent as well. And then you have the FBI man who is killed is actually a guy called Teddy Grossman, who was a stuntman for Steven Spielberg, was in a lot of early Steven Spielberg movies.
Oh, that's cool that he gave him a job. That's one thing about Amblin Entertainment. Spielberg was just always taking care of his friends and everything and giving them chances. I mean, he pretty much discovered Chris Columbus, and then
Yeah,
Chris Columbus would just go on and then work with John Hughes until eventually, gets Home Alone, then Harry Potter.
yeah.
I mean, really successful career just from being a writer in the beginning. A lot like Shane Black, actually.
Yeah, that's true. That's true because he submitted a script for Gremlins, and then apparently it was a lot darker than the finished film, and it was Spielberganized.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. Spielberg went in there with his comb and just took out what he's like, all right, you know what? We can make this a nice little heartwarming moment here. We'll keep this, but we're gonna
Yep,
fix this.
yep. That's just not making it as gruesome. You know what I mean? And tone it down a wee bit, and then set it in this wee town. And I think even Gizmo was originally supposed to be a gremlin, and went, no, we'll keep him the wee furry one. And yeah, exactly. And look, this movie, Goonies, was being made the same time as Back to the Future.
Oh wow. Oh yeah, I guess that does make sense. That does add up. And I was reading about what lot they filmed that, with the pirate ship in it. I think it was like one of the biggest stages, like stage 16 or something on Universal's lot or something like that.
Warner Brothers.
Warner Brothers lot. Okay. So
Yes.
yeah, so I was I gotta be honest, that is one thing when I still watch the movie. It could just be the 4K because I've never watched the Blu-ray, but the 4K, you could totally tell it's a soundstage.
Yeah, do you know what? I watched a thing recently about filming locations for the Goonies, and a lot of it, as we all know, was filmed in Astoria. To me, which looks like a real beautiful part of the world. I would love to live there. But yeah, they've done a lot of soundstage work back in Warner Brothers, and that apparently is one of the biggest stages in the world. And you can raise you can either raise the floor, or is it take away the floor and fill it with water. And that's where they
Yeah.
built the pirate ship. Like, for example, they filmed the Ghostbusters finale in there, Goza's
Ah.
Temple. Yeah, they also filmed Batman Returns in there.
Well, it makes sense. You could get a lot of you can just build big sets and gives you more scope. Like, yeah, especially when you think about but now you told me the Ghostbusters things, like the way they were able to zoom out so far and still make it feel big. That makes sense now.
Yeah, well, they were able to put like a backdrop of New York City, and then Goza's Temple. And then I know what you're saying, yes, about it being a set, but I mean that ship was built in full scale. And the sad thing was that when film was finished, they had to just get rid of it, destroy it.
I read that nobody wanted it.
That's what they done back then. I mean, they never built sets to last. They just built them to film, and then they took them apart afterwards. And that's just the way it was, unfortunately. But
It does kind of
yeah,
feel like a waste, right? Like that beautiful pirate ship that you built and everything, and like you couldn't find it. And he did Hook a few years later.
yeah, it is. Look, that would have been such an attraction, that pirate ship, and I love that. Like, I love how one of the best lines in the movie too, as well. It's an understated line. Is like when they get onto the ship and I think Andy says to Maggie, do you think there's any treasure? And he says, this whole ship's a treasure. And I love when he goes up into the cabin where all the jewels is, and you see all the skeletons sitting.
Speaking of that, and then the one scene where they're like, in the basement, you're right. There are some like, scary moments in here, which that's a Spielberg thing. He puts a little bit of horror in his movies.
Yeah, it's creepy. I mean, you're on that ship and all the skeletons are there, and it's like there's one with daggers in the eyes. And look, these are the things. If you want to sit and look for plot holes, you can look for plot holes. But I love that at the start, how they kind of like cater for that at the start, where Maggie's in the attic. I love that scene in the attic where they're finding all the artifacts. Chester Copperpot and and Maggie's telling the story. But I love when Chunk finds the map, or they find the map, and this like 1647. Was that a year or something? And Mouse says, no, it's the top score in pole position. Now, people mightn't realise pole position was a computer game in the 80s.
Pole Position was also a great, I think it was an Atari game. Pole Position is the one where you drive like almost like that F1 car, right? And I've definitely played that still pretty recently.
Oh, right. Well, there you go. And I haven't played games in years, so there you go. But I always remember it being like a computer game in the 80s. And but when he's telling the story, and the takes of Chunk and Dada are all kind of very like mesmerized by him telling the story. And you see Mouth is kind of looking at Josh Brolin and kind of going, and Josh Brolin's like, pfft. And he's like, oh, Dad would tell you anything to get you to sleep. Somebody says, Chunk says, well, Maggie, hold on a wee second. If they're stuck down there and they've dug all them tunnels, then how did the map or the story get out? And he says, I say the same thing to my dad. One of them must have escaped, So, I mean, there's all those pirates and those skeletons and everything and all down there. I mean, you think to yourself, well, what happened to them? Did One-Eyed Willie poison everybody once the tunnels were all dug? And who killed the pirate with the daggers in the eyes? What was that about? And all wee things like that. But they kind of preempt that, by just saying, look, well, somebody must have got out, and this is the story.
Exactly. And I'm maybe if they made that movie today, they might do like little flashbacks, like edited in there or something to show us what these pirates were like. But I like not knowing. I like like leaving it up to the imagination, especially since a lot of this movie kind of supposed to be like in the realm of like a child's imagination. Like it's supposed to feel like the biggest thing to them.
Yeah, and that's why I also like as well is that the way they ended the movie just with the ship going into the sunset. The original ending was different. They changed the ending, and nobody knows exactly why it was changed. The original ending was they went back to the house and they were actually moving, and that's where the maid found the jewels. Yeah, and some of it was filmed. The scene was filmed in California.
Yeah, they filmed it on a beach or something. I think it might have been even. No, it's not the same beach as the Warriors. But like, I actually like how that whole like end sequence. It feels very 80s, very similar like how they end Ghostbusters. Let's wrap everything up with a nice bow, and then right into the sunset, Last Crusade style. I mean, it's if you're a fan of 80s movies, that works like a charm.
Yeah, and exactly. And like you say, it's just tying everything up in a bow. And that's the whole thing with the imagination. My imagination starts thinking, wonder what happened to the ship. My imagination, it sunk. Nobody got it. It sunk. Maybe there was leaks, when it came out and it hit the rocks. You know what I mean? That's the way I think. But the funny thing is too as well, John, is when you think about as well that Mike says when he goes up and has a conversation with One-Eyed Willie, which is a bit weird.
Yeah, it's a little strange, but again, it kind of makes sense in this realm of the world. We know that might be going a little too far.
But he says, meet Willie, the first Goonie. So, in other words, there's a connection there that the Goonies are rejects, the Goonies are outcasts. And One-Eyed Willie was the first reject and the first outcast in Astoria because of the British and how they, fought against them and all the rest. But the connection as well is the booby traps and the contraptions, because you see at the start that they have built a contraption outside his house to open the door.
I was literally waiting to ask you a question about that because that was something I was thinking about. That is another thing in a lot of 80s movies, like how Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, all that kind of stuff, like little inventions like that used to pop up that kids used to make. I tried to do that every once in a while, but I was never that crafty.
No, I think it's always been one of those things, as you say, as a child, you imagined you could do stuff like that, but you never attempted it because you didn't know where to start.
Yeah, I mean, that looked like PVC pipe, like that they cut in half and put a bowling ball on. Like, what kid is doing that?
Yeah. And as you said about parents, what parents is letting you have that contraption sit at the front door like that? My dad would have that cleared away. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, like they must really love their kids because, like, no, my mother and my father, never in a million years.
No, that would be cleared away. You know, I wouldn't even get that far to be able to bake it like that. You know what I mean? But if I did, it would be cleared away the next day and put in the bin.
Yeah, that's an 80s movies thing. That's not happening in real life because I've never driven down a block or knew a friend who even had something close to that.
As much as we can relate to the kids' side of things in this movie, that is some house that they're living in, and yeah, it's became known now as the Goonies house.
Oh, it's a beautiful. I mean, that's a beautiful area, and they filmed it in Oregon for real, and it just looks like a beautiful area to live in.
Yeah, well, did you hear the background on that house?
No, I just knew that where they filmed it.
So basically, they scouted that area and picked that house out because where it overlooked, and by all accounts, the people that used to live there, they left or whatever, but it was empty for years, and this woman bought it, but she didn't know it was the Goonies house until she bought it. And then, yeah, she renovated it all. When she found out it was the Goonies house, she tried to preserve it as much as she could. She did a bit of work to it and stuff. But the problem was that there was a lot of people, tourists, were walking up the lane and taking photos in her garden and trying to take pieces of the fence. And so eventually she put a sign up to stop people coming up to the house because she was fed up with it. Recently, the house sold. They sold the house for like $1.5 million. And the guy that bought it is actually a Goonies fan. And he says that, yep, and he says any Goonies fans are welcome to come up to the house anytime. Now, they're not allowed in the grounds, they're not allowed in the house, but you can go up the lane and there's a sign saying, look, don't go beyond here. And he says he doesn't mind anybody coming up and taking photographs. But I was reading about this guy. His friend is a Goonies fan as well, and his friend bought the house next door. And the house next door went for $500,000. So it just shows you the difference in prices because one was in a famous movie and the other one wasn't.
I mean, if you're a fan of the Goonies and you bought the Goonies house, like that's the ultimate, like, yeah, I'm the biggest Goonies fan. I just don't think that with houses like that, any certain big time movie houses, I would just think that you'd want to like make it a museum at that point. Like I would think the movie studios would want to buy them because if you own those houses, it's got to be miserable.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that the guy, the fan that bought the Goonies house, he's a self-made millionaire, you know, and he said himself, you know, I bought this house for the fans, not just for me. He says, I bought it so fans could come up. And I think his whole idea is they eventually turn it into some kind of museum. And like, I was watching, you know, I like watching videos online of like, you know, locations of movies. I know a guy called, I'm sure you've heard him, Sean Clark, does Horrors, Hollow Ground, and he has got some of his documentaries. He's very good on the likes of like Blu-ray discs, like Halloween and things like that. And so I was watching like the locations of the Goonies, and this lady that owned the house before this fan bought it, like she they would have like Goonies days, and she would let people come in and stuff. They would charge to come in and look around and things. I think she eventually started to embrace it. But when she was showing people around, like there was a picture, a replica of the map in a frame on her wall, and somebody had said, "Oh, you've got the Goonies map here," and she had said, "Like, look, you know, somebody sent me out." Do you know what I mean? So people had sent her these things, yeah. So the guy that bought the house now, he wants to celebrate the house, and he says he's going to paint it back the way that Rizzy looked back in 1980s when they filmed it, and try and preserve it as much as he can. You know, if your woman hadn't bought that house, though, she says that the chance are they might have even just knocked the house down because it was the floor was rotten and stuff. And she showed the attic and all. Obviously, in the movie they filmed, that was a soundstage, and if you notice, there's a mistake because you go up the ladder one way, and when you go up, whatever way they go up, there should be a wall, and there's not. It's around the other way. So, but she actually converted the attic, and it is tiny. The attic is very, very small. But what a view! I mean, the big windows up there in the attic, and there's some views out overlooking the ocean and stuff like that. It's tremendous.
Oh my god, yeah, I would love to live in an area or a town like that. It's got that small town feel. The beach is right there. The only thing is, Oregon, it kind of rains a lot, but I don't mind that. I hate the sun.
Yeah, well, I was actually when I was reading the making of, I've just read a book and I'll plug it here. It's called 3 Weeks with the Goonies. It's a book I had my own for a while, and I've actually bought it a couple of months ago, and I read it during the last week or so. It's not a very long book. It's about 140 pages, and it's about a guy who's from Oregon, and I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, by the way, John. I've Oregon. Um, but he actually was a aspiring filmmaker, and when he heard that Steven Spielberg was coming to make a movie in Oregon, he went down and asked could he work on it, and they said yes. He thought it was Spielberg was going to direct it, and it turned out it was Richard Donner, and he says he was first disappointed, but then he realized, but this is the guy that done The Omen, this is the guy that done Superman, and they were all very nice and treated him very well. But they filmed this movie in late October, early November, and the weather apparently was terrible. But they wanted it to be an autumn movie, so they did. But when they went to film, like where the cafe and stuff was, where the fratellis were, they says that it was supposed to be a half-day shoot. It took them 3.5 days because the weather was so bad.
Oh my god, it does look like it when you watch the movie, especially when you watch it on 4K. It's like always overcasty, so every time they're outside, it's always like that, and it looks like it wasn't a fun shoot. I'm sure that it's not a fun shoot. That's one thing now, I guess that's kind of nice, but I still miss them shooting on location and everything. The fact that it must have been better for the kids too.
I personally think, what I like about this movie too, if you think about it like too much, like I do like to do sometimes, it's like for example, going back to my favorite film, I like to talk about Jaws in every podcast. It's like the biggest problem with Jaws is the continuity, because you're filming at sea. Like one scene it'll be cloudy, and next scene it'll be clear skies. Scene, in the same scene, 1 minute the water's choppy, the next minute it's calm. You can't control the weather. These things are being filmed over weeks, and it's supposed to be the same scene or the same day. So people have said that, but if you think of it like this, the sky and the seas suit the mood of what's happening at that specific moment. So when I watch the Goonies now, that whole kind of gloomy, rainy, overcast kind of weather at the start of the movie contrasted to when they're on the beach at the very end, when the problems are resolved, is contrasting. Because their lives on that Saturday was miserable. It was gloomy. It was bleak. But when they come out the other side, it's now clear skies and sunshine, and they've won. They've capped the Goondocks. Do you know what I mean? They've discovered the treasure. The age-old kind of mystery of what happened. Was it a myth? Was it real? It's all the resolutions at the end. So that's the way I kind of look at that.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, it's a great way to look at it. And, we're talking about this now it's the end of April. This will come out at the beginning of May. Springtime, a lot of rain where I live in this time of the year. I'm sure there's a lot of rain around you this time of the year. This is the perfect rainy day, springtime movie.
Yeah, exactly. And I know we had talked about, watching movies for the season. And this movie is actually set in October, and I don't know. Yeah, and I don't
feel like October.
No, exactly. And I think that like there's certain movies, I think I've talked before in the pod, it's like you watch them as a kid and you just take them as they are. And maybe when you get older, you might watch them and go, well, I've grown out of watching that movie. And there's other movies that stick with you. So this is one of these movies that's just stuck with me. And then you revisit it and you kind of like as an adult fall in love with it again. Do you know what I mean? And it was a few years ago I watched this around, it was more around February time. It was one of those bright February days, you know what I mean? And then it kind of stuck with me. I was like, yeah, this is the type of movie I want to watch at the start of the year, around springtime, just to bring the summer in. But again, watching it again, as you say, with a lot of the rain and things they got, I suppose it could be one of those autumn type of movies.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I say it feels like kind of spring is like in autumn where I live, like, it's kind of, we have cloudy days, but I wouldn't say it rains that much. But in April and May, a lot of days look like that here, like like that, like we say April showers bring May flowers, because it's just the whole month of April here it just rains.
Yeah, well, listen, as you know, I'm from Ireland. It rains most of the time. We actually, as I said, not that weekend or the weekend before, we had a really nice weekend, and I was sick and I missed most of it. Was in bed for most of the weekend, and then that weekend there, it was bright outside, but it was cold. There's a cold wind, but the last few days it's just been licing, and the day never stopped. So it's been very overcast and gloomy and rainy all day today. But it's supposed to be milder tomorrow, because I looked the weather up. wee bit of sun on Thursday, rain on Friday, and then it's going to rain all weekend. That's basically what our summers are like.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, summer's supposed to be named after the sun. Sun.
So I don't know what sun is. I mean, that's what I sit and thinking. It's been like this since October, maybe September. Yeah, I've got to put up with 7 months of this.
Oh my God. Yeah, our seasons are all over the place. At least we'll get some sun. I mean, it's nothing like Philadelphia, which isn't too far from here. I think they get like 15 or 16 sunny days a year, but we get a little bit more than that. But it sounds like you might be floating around that.
Yeah, we'd be lucky to get that, John. It's just you just can't plan anything. It's hit and miss. We could get a heat wave for a week, 2 weeks. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, that's what I say. Like, people complain about the weather all the time, and it's like, you live in Ireland, what do you expect? It's kind of like, you should be used to it by now, but it does get you down, sometimes. But
some people get lucky, and then they charge more to live in those areas anyway. So
yeah, the only thing is that thankfully, touch wood, we don't get any extreme weather. I mean, you could live in a really hot place where you get the likes of tornadoes and hurricanes and things like that.
That's a good thing. Yeah, we don't get that. Like, we're kind of in an area where we don't have anything we never get tornadoes. We just had an earthquake here not too long ago, which was like the first one in like forever. It was the first one I ever felt in my life. And even that,
God.
I thought it was windy out, so I should just tell you what I think of an earthquake.
It's like, it's rather windy out there. It's like an earthquake going off.
I was standing with a guy. I was in his house, and we were like, just like, you felt that? And I was like, yeah, I felt that. He's like, and we both were like, yes, pretty windy today, huh? And went back to do it. And then I looked at my phone, and everyone's talking about an earthquake. I was like, is that what that was?
Jesus. Well, you see, but that's unbelievable. But that's what I'm saying. We don't have to worry about any of those type of extremes. We're starting to get a few more storms now. You know what I mean? We don't get as much snow as we used to. Or winters are getting a wee bit milder, but we're getting more storms. It just seems to be getting wetter. Even though it's always been wet, but it just seems to be getting wetter.
It's so funny you said that, because we've only had like one snowstorm, I think the one over the last 2 years. And I think I was talking to you during one of them, actually, like doing this podcast. I remember saying on one of our shows that it was snowing out. But yeah, it used to be a lot more. It's a lot wetter now, I would say, but not as much snow. So I'm wondering, maybe, who knows? That's for people who get paid more than us.
I just speculate on.
Yeah.
Yeah. All I know is that I just want it to be sunnier. That's all I know, and I can't.
Doesn't look like that's gonna happen.
Yeah, no, it's not gonna happen. No.
But to circle back to the end of this movie, wrap this one up. At least they end on a sunny day.
Yeah, exactly. At least they end on a sunny. I believe that I was reading that book. It says was that was reshot in January, so that's just a bright winter's day on the beach. But it certainly looks a lot warmer when you watch the movie. It looks like a spring day.
Yeah, it does. It looks like it was a little bit windy that morning. Like a little.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, got any last thoughts on the Goonies before we wrap this one up?
No, listen, my only thoughts is that, as I said earlier in the pod, is that this is a quintessential 80s movie. If you're somebody that enjoys 80s movies and you haven't seen the Goonies, definitely give it a watch. It's up there with like all those tempo 80s movies.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything David says, and I'm glad that we did this show and it forced me to rewatch the Goonies, because now I will be rewatching the Goonies more often. And we talked about physical media here. It's a great 4K Blu-ray. I got to be honest, it's one of the better Warner Brothers ones. I was impressed with it, but it does reveal that it does make that soundstage more noticeable. But anyway, it's a great movie, so make sure you guys check it out, and we will be back with another episode of the Let's Talk podcast in a couple of weeks, and we will be seeing you around.